Hello everybody. We are going to be working on continuing our work in Chapter 2 in the book today. But before we begin, I wanted to talk about using a different development environment, and I'm going to be introducing different tools as we go. But if you look in your Unit 2 folder, I think it is, or maybe it's Unit 3. Nope, it's in Unit 2. You can see I have this activity here. Now, I know that most of you at this point have probably downloaded jGrasp and probably thank your lucky stars that you don't have to work from the command line. And now what I'm looking to do is take you up to the next level and really take you up to tools that people that work in development actually use to do this work. And since you're getting trained to go into the workforce, it's good to know the tools. So the tools that we most often see in the workplace are the two that are listed here, which are Eclipse and NetBeans. Typically here at Gateway, you'll find that most of the instructors that teach this technology will prefer to use Eclipse. I tend to be part of that crowd, but NetBeans is better for some things. And then when you go to install this program, there's a lot of options that you can run into, and they can be very confusing because you're going away from a really simple piece of software to a piece of software that is robust and highly adjustable, meaning that you can add plugins, there's custom configurations, you can work in many different languages, not just Java, and so the choices become a little blurred. So my hope here is that I can kind of hold your hand through the process of picking the right tool to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take us over to our resources page. So if in the course shell here on the left, you can click on resources, and you'll see right up here at the top, I have this useful links section. Now what I'm going to point out here is some of the things that we've already looked at, including all the Java tools that we need, basically taking you to the Oracle website and the downloads to get the Java JDK and the runtime environment and all that, which we've already got out of the way. Now the official development environment provided by Oracle is NetBeans. And if you go through the process of installing NetBeans and you don't have any of the Java stuff installed on your system, guess what? It takes care of it for you. So that's one thing that you might want to consider. Joan, I know you're going to be teaching students and you'll probably be configuring machines. NetBeans might be a decent option for you just because of that. So whoever your tech people are, it might be easier for them to configure, because I don't know their skill level. It's different, everywhere. They might be people that work on workstations but don't know anything about software, and that happens. But I'm going to start by taking us over to the Eclipse IDE, but I do also want to make a special mention down here, this tool that was introduced to me not that long ago, and then I discovered that a lot of schools, especially in learning environments that are rudimentary, like to use BlueJ, so this is another one that you might want to investigate. What's cool about it is that it allows you some visual components. So for example, when you create a Java file, you'll have this interface where you'll see like a visual. Here's my class file. Here's another class file. Oh, you see how they link together? And so there's like a visual component, and some people like that. I'm not a huge fan, I'll say that right off the bat, but I do think it's an interesting tool. Maybe if I learned with that tool, I'd have a different opinion of it, but I like to get my hands dirty on the code. So let's go ahead and click on this link here, and I'm going to caution you, those that are working on your own machines, and I know there's a number of you, especially those listening to the video, don't get gung-ho and install right off the bat. Please listen to the video and where I'm going to point you to, because really what you want to install is the second option here, not the first option. Eclipse, in fact, let's go to their homepage. Eclipse, as it says there, it's an open source IDE. IDE, you guys should know this, Integrated Development Environment, provides all the tools that you need in one software package, very much like Visual Studio when you learned your intro to programming. If you do a little bit of scrolling down here and you look at some of the things it does, like you can get a little snapshot of what it looks like, and there's a boatload of information. But ultimately, you're going to end up going to the downloads page, which is where I pointed you to initially, right? No big deal, where's the download button? Okay, there's a whole bunch of them. Now, notice they have like an installer here, And notice that they offer 32-bit versions and 64-bit versions. And the big question is, which one do I install? Any guesses? If you're going to install the 64-bit, that's what you should install. That's my opinion. Does it matter which one you install? Actually, no. You can author 64-bit software using a 32-bit program. It's fairly irrelevant. It really is more for the fact of how your system runs. There shouldn't be too many people running 32-bit operating systems anymore. XP is probably about it. Okay, so I don't recommend that you download 32-bit. You should go right for 64-bit, but don't hit that button yet, because this is going to install a generic version of Eclipse that is designed to do Java work. You can do Java work right out of the box, but if you start scrolling down here and look at all these different implementations, this version here is designed to work with Java SE, which is the environment that we're mostly going to be coding in here. When we go to Java 2, you'll work in the EE environment, and that stands for Enterprise Edition. SE stands for Standard Edition. Now, you'll notice that they have a separate one for Java EE developers. It has different tools built into it. And notice if you start changing your goal here, look at all these different versions. You can do PHP. They even have these custom ones that people build for doing very particular things. Like people that are in the auto industry, for example, have customized versions of Eclipse for writing the software that controls the computers that run your car. Okay, so that's kind of specialized. It's not probably one that you would want to download, but it's out there if you were interested. And then whichever version you do download, there's always the ability to add stuff to it, remove stuff from it, and turn it into basically any other version. Not to complicate things. It's basically kind of like a Swiss Army knife, and if you want, you can add different blades, that suit you. So any of these that you want to explore, please feel free. Right now, Eclipse is in the version they call Mars. That's the latest version. Then they have Luna, that was the previous version, and they keep going back. There's no reason not to get the newest version. Get the newest version of the software no matter what. But still don't click the download button. So what happens now is I'm going to point you to this other spot. Now, the reason I point you to this spot is if you're going to be in this program and then eventually you're going to do Java 2, you may as well download the tools that are going to work with that environment right away. So this link that I'm going to point you to is going to have the capability of working with the SE, the Standard Edition, and the Enterprise Edition, and has all the graphical tools built in that normally you would have to add on separately. And since it was such a pain to walk people through the process, I found this. You know how I found this? By actually reading the web page. Because everybody goes there and you see the button that says download and you click on it. And then I was at the Eclipse website. I'm like, okay, I need to add Java effects so we can do graphics. Where's their thing? Okay, here it is in this complicated set of instructions. And then in real fine print at the bottom it says, or go to this link here, which I'm about to do. And this is on the Eclipse website. This is a separate organization that basically has a pre-built version of Eclipse that focuses on being able to do the graphical components built in, plus a bunch of other libraries. You can see all the tools it natively adds. What's neat about this is they do nightly builds. So what that means is if there's a new version of any one of the software packages that's listed here, they rebundle it, and every day you get a fresh copy. The other cool thing about this is it's portable. Eclipse, unlike a lot of pieces of software, does not install into the registry of your system. There's no installer. You download it, you unzip it, and you run it. So that means you can pick it up, you can put it on a flash drive, throw it in your Google Drive. I'm trying to give you guys some ideas here. And then you can pull it down to wherever you need and continue working. There's no installation at all. Okay. And that is very appealing, especially if you are working in an environment that's locked. Many of you here in the classroom, you're working on these VDI terminals, you really are pretty limited. If you're logged into the VDI, you can pull up Eclipse that's already installed. And that's what I'm going to have you do. But if you are working in a system that is your own and you want to install it, then this would be the piece of software. Now, I see a Mac person sitting here. You will need to download the OS X version, but that does exist for the Mac as well. So, and it is equally as portable and highly recommended, basically. All right, so if you're interested, go ahead and download it. Choose the 64-bit, unless you know you have an old XP machine, you should be fine. And then once you have it loaded up on your system, and I have a habit of kind of organizing things a certain way on my machine, and because Eclipse is standalone, I just have it dropped into a folder. I keep a separate folder just for software, and that's where it resides. Now I'm trying to remember which one of these is the one I want to use, and I probably have created a shortcut here in my start menu, I'm guessing. I sure have. Let's see if it brings up, yeah, it brings up the Mars version. So if you guys are logged into the VDI, go ahead and open up the software. If you are working on your own machine, do the download really quick and unzip it. I will pause the video and wait for you. Okay? All right, as I've been waiting for everybody to download and unzip their stuff here in class, I think everybody's up to speed or close. I'm going to go ahead and launch Eclipse. You can see I have a shortcut for it in my toolbar, in my task bar, but really it resides in a folder on my machine. So as I was indicating before, it'll let me go there. That's very odd. You guys seeing that? Can't switch to my folder. All right, so I have a software folder on my D drive here where I just store all sorts of software, and Eclipse just resides in here. And what I did is I manually made a link to it. So for example, I just right-click on the exe file once I'm actually on it, and then I pinned it to the start. Now, mine's already pinned to the start menu, but that's a way that you can add it to your start menu, or if you want, you can then, once it's in the start menu, you can pin it to your taskbar, or once it's running. So if you plan to use it a lot, that's a smart thing to do. But, you know, that's completely up to you. Your environment is yours to manipulate as you see fit.
Otherwise, you have to open up the folder to get it to run. You have to go to the folder that has
Yes.
to run it.
Yes, and that can be a little cumbersome. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and launch Eclipse. Yours, if you just downloaded it, you might have a newer version than what I have. You'll probably have a more modern looking splash screen. All right, once you launch Eclipse, you're going to get presented with this little interface here about choosing a workspace. The one thing that I want to caution you on is clicking the checkbox and then moving on and never, going back. You can adjust this after the fact, and it might work for you that one workspace is adequate. But usually when you start to do a bunch of development work, you'll find that you're going to put different projects in different workspaces. But you might find for this class it's more than adequate to have one workspace. So really what you need to do is kind of plan a little bit in advance. So you might actually want to drop down to your file system and find a spot where you store things. So for example, I will store everything on my Google Drive for this class. So I have a Java Programming 1, and I already set up for Summer 2016 a folder, and you can see I already have my stuff in there. So that's the folder I'm going to choose as my workspace. Notice that that contains other folders. So it's just going to be my central repository, at least for now. So I'm going to go ahead and browse and find that spot. I guess I got to find my Google Drive here somewhere.
Add install, okay.
So I've got the folder selected, and then I'm going to click OK. I am not checking that box. That does mean that every time I launch the software it's going to ask me, but if you start doing complicated work, like I said, you'll be thankful. All right, so now it's opening up, And you're going to see as it opens up, it has a lot of the features that a robust IDE has available, including within the product navigation of files and projects, a console window so that you can see your console output. So most of the programs we're going to write are going to go to the console. The code window, and it's got a very rich set of debugging tools and IntelliSense tools, and those are probably the ones that you're going to appreciate the most, because when you're writing your code, guess what it does? It tells you that something's wrong. But then comes the challenging part, and the challenging part is, so something is wrong, what do you do to fix it? Because it will suggest fixes that might not be the right fix for you. Some of that comes with experience, and I'll try to help you navigate those waters. All right, if you want to let these people know, keep track of you, whatever, we'll say okay, because, hey, they put this all together for us for free, so why not give them a little data. All right, so this is the welcome screen. I'm just right away going to go ahead and close it, and then you're going to see what is roughly the standard environment. I realize that mine is not the default configuration out of the box. You very likely have a couple of other palettes here on the side. All the little sections of the screen where you see a tab, you can adjust, you can grab them, pull them out of the environment, you can move them around, resize them, turn them off. I'm sorry? Okay. I'm not sure what any of yours looks like, but it should be roughly in this format. All right, and when we're working in Visual Studio, you guys usually work with the Solution Explorer, which is located on the right side of the screen. And here we use what's called the Package Explorer. It's not exactly the same thing, but it does give you a hierarchy of files and objects within your programs. And you'll see as we start to create things. All right, just for the sake of example, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to File and choose New. And then you're going to choose Java Project from the top. But as you sit there, just hover for a second and take a look at all the options that are available. There's a lot. Some of them, you're like, I have no idea what that is. And that's okay. Over time, you will learn what those things are. But if we start a new Java project, it basically creates a framework for us to build our application. So I'm just going to click the button, and now it's going to ask me for a project name. So I'm going to give it a name, and what are we going to call it? Hello, Racine, and/or Kenosha.
Hello, Racine.
Hello, Racine. Thanks, Sean. That's Sean chiming in on Hangouts. Just so you know, Sean, that gets recorded.
Nice. I don't mind being on.
All right. Notice some of the other options that are present here. You can actually select the runtime environment you want to use. More likely than not, you only have one, or if you have multiple ones listed, it'll be the result of other stuff that you've installed. Typically, you go with the latest version. There's really no reason to go with anything earlier, because then you really put yourself at risk for having insecure software. Most of the stuff we're doing isn't much of an issue. All right, we're going to go with all the rest of the default settings. I could click Finish at this point, but I do want to click Next to show you that there's some other screens where you can put in some options. This is an area that you probably will not use initially, but as you start to create more rich applications, you might actually start to develop class libraries or jar files that contain consolidated version of code that you've already created. So let's say you created something some really cool methods, for example, and you want to reuse them again. You can pull them in here. Or if you want to pull in a library of functions from somebody else, you can do that. You can pull them in here. And there's other little tools. For example, if you're going to connect to a database, you would pull in a database connection file and you would do it in this interface here. So we really don't have anything of that sort to worry about. So we're just going to go ahead and click Finish. And then you'll see over here on the left-hand side that it created the project node, meaning the root level of the project. Notice there's a little expander arrow. And then underneath it, there's a folder that says SRC. Guess what that stands for? Source.
Source.
Okay. And then notice here that there's the JRE system library. You can go ahead and expand that. Typically, you don't need to, but I want to show you that this is basically a collection of Java archive files, known as jar files. So they're the equivalent of a zip file, and each one of these are all part of the standard Java library. So for example, if I just pick one here at random, notice that there's a whole bunch of stuff listed in here. And if I open that up, well, wow, there's all these class files. And if I open that up, you get the picture, right? It's a rich library of stuff that you can draw from natively within the Java environment. In other words, you don't need to import these. When we write higher level programs, we'll get to the point where we're going to need to import certain components to make things work. And we'll show you how that happens.
Absolutely.
All right, so here we are. We have a project set up, but we don't have any files in it yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to come here to this source folder and just give it a right click. Hover over New, and then we're going to add a class. Class file is like the rudimentary Java program file. All right, so now you're presented with another dialog, and this is where it can get a little hairy if you've never done this before. Typically, all I think you should do at this screen is type in the name of the project. That's my recommendation. There are other settings that you can make. So let's just type in hello, Racine, or Kenosha. It allows you to pre-configure some settings. For right now, all the work that we're going to do is going to be in the public domain, meaning that the class file is accessible to other files within the project. It also has a little checkbox here. See this little checkbox? It says public static void main. Oh wow, it does that automatically? Oh yeah. Let's do that.
Can't have those students do that.
All right, and then also notice that there's this thing called a superclass where we're pulling from the Java language library. So typically, if we didn't have this little component built in, we'd have to like import everything, but this will pull in all the core components for us automatically. So at that point, just go ahead and click Finish. You can see it added the file here. Notice the Java extension, and it built the root of our code. So the root part of it is there. The opening and closing curly brackets, the public static void main, and now you have a place where you can actually drop in your code. So why don't we just do like the stereotypical hello world. So I'm just going to start typing system dot, notice how it's IntelliSensing here, and as I type, but here's a catch. Do I want print stream? No. Is that a bad thing? No, it's not a bad thing, but that's not what we're learning right now. But I want you also to notice that as I'm typing this, how it's also not only indicating the things that we can pull in, but also tells you what each one of them does. And if you're really curious, and as you get to be a more involved coder, you are going to want to follow these because you're going to look for things. How do I, well, I'm not sure. This one looks like it might be close. Let's read the documentation. And that's why that first chapter, they had you do that exercise to go out to the Oracle website, because the more advanced your coding gets, the more often you're going to be going out trying to figure out what stuff does, what parameters I can throw at it, what it actually returns, you know, what values are valid, what aren't. All right, so we want print line, so I'm just going to keep typing here. And then I just pressed enter. Now, of course, I still have to put something in there. I'll tab it over. And I'm supposing you guys probably can't see my my screen all too well. Okay, so I bumped up my font size a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and do my hello scene. And then I'm going to go ahead and run it. And this is going to be very much like what we do in jGrasp, and that is where we can debug, compile, and run. We can do it all in one fell swoop. But there are separate buttons up here if you want to take that route. In essence, though, the debug is kind of already done for us, because like watch what happens when I get rid of the semicolon. You see the little red mark here? And you see that it like suggests a fix. That's pretty cool, right? And you can fix it. So, but that's not a good fix. This is the good fix. All right. So typically you're just going to come up and you're going to hit the run button. Then you're going to see, yes, it asks us to save, that it comes up down here in the console. Down here. That's success. No errors. When you do start to throw errors in this environment, they can get very, very verbose. Don't freak out to them, because one error can generate a page worth of, like, uh-oh. What you're going to learn to do, for example, I'm going to run it again. See, errors exist. Proceed. And what's going to happen is the compiler is going to throw an error, and it's going to tell you where to look. And notice how it gives a line number? And if you click it, it takes you right to it. So that's pretty handy as well. So the environment is robust, and it can be a little bit intimidating initially because there really are a lot of powerful tools here. But I think that you might prefer to work in it. And I think I'm going to work in this environment for the rest of the evenings so you guys can see the workflow that goes with it. All right, well, I'm going to cap this video here, and then we're going to start a fresh video to do our coding.